Marcus Davis was a black man living in a small town near Portland, where he owned a repair shop that had been in his family for generations. He worked hard every day fixing bicycles and radios, and hoped for nothing more than peace and fairness. One afternoon, a nearby jewelry store was robbed, and the police found a blurry photo of a man walking nearby just before the crime. Officer Jonathan Briggs, a white cop with deep-seated prejudices, immediately suspected Marcus because of his skin color and the bag he was carrying. Briggs did not look for evidence, but acted on assumptions alone. Briggs got a warrant, searched Marcus's home, found nothing but arrested him, accusing obstruction of justice. Marcus was devastated as news spread. Clients stopped coming. Neighbors avoided him, even friends stayed away. A young lawyer named Elise Warner took his case, found proof Marcus was miles away during the robbery, and the real thief, a white man with a criminal history, was caught. Despite the truth, Briggs refused to admit his mistake. Marcus was released, but his reputation was damaged forever. Months later, Briggs reflected on his actions, realized his biases blinded him, and apologized. Marcus accepted quietly and continued his work, becoming a symbol of resilience and hope, reminding all that justice must be blind to skin color and based on truth alone. Briggs's world began to shift as he faced the consequences of his actions. Alone in his patrol car, he replayed every moment of the investigation, questioning why he had targeted Marcus without real proof. The weight of his mistakes pressed heavily on him. He started attending training sessions on unconscious bias and racial injustice, topics he had once dismissed. Slowly, he opened himself to learning, listening to stories of those who had suffered from prejudice. One evening, months after the arrest, Briggs visited Marcus's repair shop unannounced. Marcus was working quietly, his hands steady despite the scars left by false accusations. Briggs, out of uniform and uncertain, spoke softly, offering a sincere apology, not as a police officer, but as a man. Marcus listened, acknowledging the apology without anger or forgiveness, simply accepting the truth between them. Though justice had been delayed and pain endured, this moment marked a fragile step toward healing. Marcus continued his life, repairing not only machines but also the broken trust in his community. His story became a quiet reminder that racism often hides behind assumptions and procedures, and that true justice requires courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Marcus Davis had weathered many storms in his life, but nothing had prepared him for the storm that swept through his quiet town after the false accusation. The damage done was not just to his reputation or business, but to his very spirit. Each morning, as he unlocked the door to his repair shop, he carried the weight of suspicion like a silent shadow. The whispers that floated through the streets like poison seeped into every corner of his world. People who once greeted him warmly now glanced away or crossed the street to avoid him. The sting of betrayal was not just in the cold looks, but in the absence of those who had once called him friend. Marcus's hands, skilled and steady, trembled occasionally, betraying the anger and hurt he tried to suppress. He repaired bicycles and radios with the same care he applied to his own fractured dignity. The tools in his hands were a balm, a reminder of his worth beyond the lies and assumptions cast upon him. But as days turned into weeks, the loneliness grew heavier. The silence of his shop, once filled with the chatter of customers and the laughter of children, was now a hollow echo. Officer Jonathan Briggs, meanwhile, sat in his patrol car more often than he liked to admit, wrestling with the gnawing discomfort that crept into his conscience. The initial certainty he had felt when pointing the finger at Marcus had given way to a slow-burning doubt. The evidence was clear, yet his instincts, steeped in years of prejudice, had clouded his judgment. The realization was painful. He had allowed bias to override justice, and a man's life had been nearly destroyed because of it. Briggs's internal struggle was not public. He kept his doubts to himself, afraid of appearing weak or admitting fault in a department where toughness was valued above all. But the weight of his mistakes settled like a stone in his chest, growing heavier with each passing day. He began attending mandatory training sessions on racial bias and cultural sensitivity, with a different mindset than before. What had once seemed like a tedious requirement now became an uncomfortable mirror, reflecting his own flaws. Elise Warner, the young public defender who had championed Marcus's innocence, continued to fight quietly behind the scenes. She was relentless, pushing for changes in the department's policies and advocating for victims of racial profiling. Her passion ignited conversations within the community and even within the police force. But progress was slow, hindered by entrenched attitudes and a reluctance to confront uncomfortable truths. One rainy evening, months after the ordeal, Briggs found himself standing outside Marcus's repair shop. The rain fell in soft sheets, blurring the edges of the streetlights and muffling the sounds of the town. He hesitated before knocking on the door, feeling the weight of the apology he had carried for so long. When Marcus opened the door, his eyes met Briggs's with a mixture of fatigue and guarded hope. Briggs spoke with a voice stripped of authority, offering a sincere apology, not just for the false accusation, but for the years of prejudice that had shaped his actions. Marcus listened, his expression unreadable. Forgiveness did not come easily, but he acknowledged the courage it took for Briggs to admit his wrongs. The two men stood in silence, the unspoken understanding between them more powerful than any words. Marcus's life slowly began to heal. His shop regained some of its former warmth as old customers returned and new ones came, drawn by the resilience of a man who refused to be broken. The scars of injustice remained, but they became part of his story, a story he shared not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength that inspired those around him. Briggs continued his work as a police officer, changed by the experience. He became an advocate for fairness within the force, using his position to challenge biases and promote accountability. The journey was far from over, but the first steps had been taken. In the heart of the town, where the shadows of suspicion once lingered, a new light began to shine. It was the light of truth, of courage, and of the belief that justice could prevail when people dared to confront their own prejudices and listen to the voices of those they had wronged. Marcus Davis's story became a testament to the enduring fight against racism, a reminder that even in the face of deep injustice, resilience and hope could forge a path toward healing and change. And as the seasons turned, the town slowly learned that true justice was not blind but open-eyed, fearless, and compassionate.